Hey there, and welcome to the Brandon Sneed Show, a podcast telling stories about more or less everything with a loose central theme of people navigating the chaos of life. I'm your host, Brandon Sneed, and I'm collecting interviews with and stories about people who seem like they come from wildly different walks of life, finding the common threads between them and unpacking the ways that life pretty much never goes according to plan. We'll cover where they are now, how they got here, moments along the way they weren't sure they'd make it, and the things that have pulled them through. I'm doing all this with an eye toward the most moving stories and people I've come across throughout all levels of sports, art, and entertainment, from world-famous all-time greats to local legends and everyone in between. We'll explore their highs and lows, their comebacks and scars, their minutiae and inspiration, their passions and prayers, and their raw beauty and humanity. I've found a lot of these people through my work as a journalist for places like the New York Times, Sports Illustrated, ESPN, and a bunch more over the last decade plus. You can find links to and information and updates about the show and show notes and bonus material and all kinds of other stuff at brandonsneed.com and by subscribing to my newsletter there. And if you're listening to this, just know there's also a YouTube channel where we have video as well. And if you're watching us on YouTube, hey, glad you're here. Not in my comfort zone at all, but we're rolling with it because people who are a lot smarter than me, frankly, about podcasting things told me it's a good idea to get it out there wherever people might be able to find it. So here I am. And if you are listening and want to see the guests I've interviewed, I've done these interviews all over video and recorded them, and you can check it out on YouTube. There's links to the YouTube channel on my website as well. So that's this. Really glad you're here. And today we got episode 3, and our guest is going to be Jill Collen Jefferson, who's one of the most badass people I've ever met in my life, quite frankly. After working as a speechwriter on Barack Obama's presidential election campaign, she went on to become a successful corporate attorney before ultimately leaving all of that behind to start Julian, a legal nonprofit through which she investigates modern day lynchings and other civil rights cases, often in her home state of Mississippi and around the country. She grew up in Jones County, Mississippi, birthplace of the KKK as we know it today. And her work regularly takes her through some of the most dangerous places a young Black woman could go, including, where she grew up, which is where she was when we recorded our interview. So I'm going to let her more or less take it from here, and just really loved this conversation. Jill's amazing, and her story is too. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And here is Jill.
Well, hi. First, just what's your name? Tell us who you are real quick.
My name is Jill Collen Jefferson. I am the founder and president of Julian.
Okay. And we were just, first off, thanks for taking the time. So yeah, we were just talking before I hit record here. Where are you right now, and what are you doing?
I'm in Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
I am in the sticks at this moment in Jones County, which is the place where Sam Bowers, who's the imperial wizard of the KKK during the height of the civil rights movement, where he basically operated from. It's where he's from. And so, yeah, that's where I am right now.
And yeah, Sam Bowers, imperial wizard, KKK. Okay, so what the hell are you doing there, Jill?
Well, I was born and raised in Mississippi, and what we're doing is Julian has been working on issues of, I'll say, racial terror, from modern day lynchings to now a crisis in Lexington, Mississippi, which is in the Delta. It's in Holmes County, which is one of the poorest counties in the nation, predominantly Black county, where the police department has been terrorizing the Black citizens. Basically, the police department is the town's gang. And so we filed suit against the city and against the police department and a couple of officers, the current chief, Charles Henderson, and the former chief, Sam Bowers. And we have a hearing coming up next Friday. But what has been happening in the last few days, it's just, this crisis is just ongoing. And one thing that happens in things like this is that there are some people who want media attention. They just want to capitalize on it. And so there was an extremist group in Lexington on Monday. I think it's that Monday or Tuesday. I think it was Monday. Yes. My days are running. It's just been crazy. Yeah. And it's a group that they have advocated for the killing of little babies and elderly women. And it's like basically, they were there, to give them the benefit of the doubt, I guess, to support the community. But they're on SPLC's group of list of hate groups and Anti-Defamation League, and they're just a lot. And communities ask them to stay away. And so in this instance, they had at the last minute been disinvited by the group that had invited them, and they decided to come anyway, which tells you the kind of lack of respect they have for this community. But that's what we've been trying to make sure there's no violence, because they did admit even in there that they are violent and that they will take out a white person if they have to. We don't need that. This whole thing is about, civil rights violations and equality and stopping ridiculous violence and terror. Right. And so none of that helps this cause. But they are planning to come back. Someone asked them to come back next week to protest the Confederate statue in Lexington. The thing is with that, Julian's youth organizers a few weeks ago actually got the Holmes County Board of Supervisors to commit to taking down that statue and to pay for it. And, it didn't, take a protest and so basically this group coming back and protesting this statue, basically it runs the risk of the Board of Supervisors just saying, you know what, let me try. I'm going to try not to curse.
Hey, no, you can curse.
But
I feel like it's appropriate in this situation.
Yeah,
Curse it up.
I feel like it's gonna cause the Board of Supervisors to basically say, screw it. We're gonna keep the statue. We're gonna agree to this, and then you're gonna beat us over the head.
I'm sorry for all the background noise. Jesus.
No worries.
I was trying to fix the computer was being weird.
You're good.
Yeah.
You're good.
So so that's a lot. So you're there, on behalf, basically of Julian, this, legal firm you founded essentially, right, to do things like this. Tell us, it's, so you're there basically trying to, on one hand, help people, the Black community down there, deal with, the police and other members of the community, particularly those in power there. They're just giving Black people a hard time, in a lot of, we can cuss in a lot of fucked up ways. So you go down there for that, and so on one hand you're dealing with that, and now you've got some other people from the other side of that fence who are now trying to come in there and fuck shit up on their terms in opposition to what you're trying to, in opposition to the people you're also working against, but they're going about it in an equally chaotic and violent fashion, essentially. Am I understanding this right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's back up a sec. Well, first off, are you okay? Because Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I am. I really think that this is gonna, sound probably weird, and people are gonna be like, "What the hell?" But growing up in Mississippi, you get used to just crises. Like you're just like, man, you're like constantly just like in the mode to have to respond to something. And so the stuff that's seeing is stuff that I expect is disappointing to, that it's happening, and it's a distraction to the fight. Like it's innocent, it's a distraction to the cause.
Right.
But it's, I know it's always been there, and it will likely always be there.
Yeah.
In all of this, I just feel like we cannot lose the moral high ground in this,
Yeah.
like it's so easy for people to, blame, marginalize people for their own problems. And, like this narrative and this whole thing, like keeping the high ground, not losing traction, not losing sight of the goals. That's like, that's incredibly important, to win this. And at this,
Yeah.
and it's also, if you think about, the people who are investigating this, and you're just thinking about it, purely in the sense of reaching goals, then, it's a distraction for them to have to like pay attention to some other group that's doing something that they shouldn't be doing, when they could, and instead these investigative agencies could be, for example, investigating criminal charges against the police.
Right.
Like they're having to spend their
Yeah.
resources on something that's not even, important.
Yeah.
And so anyway, but
I mean, it is. It's like, it's on one hand, it's just so infuriating to like know what's going on. And I mean, especially, as you can see, I am a white dude. So this hasn't been
I
my
see that.
reality. Yeah. And I mean, I can see that and use my imagination, but I mean, to live and grow up, experiencing, life, especially there, as a Black person going through that, and to see that from afar, even if you're a passionate person of any kind and you see and are aware of that kind of violence, I mean, it's, that's, for better or worse, violence begets violence, right? And so like, it's a natural, like incredibly human, response that, I mean, makes perfect sense. But on the other hand, you're right. I mean, for better or worse, you have to think about things like moral high ground, because that is the world we live in, unfortunately.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
Maybe, I mean, it's just, yeah. So, and there you are right in the middle of it. So why, I mean, I asked you to do this because of your story, and I want to hear more about the work you're doing right now, but I want to take a sec, take a beat and back up and just say, I mean, why are you doing all this? Because you're there. I mean, you got your team, right? Let's lay the groundwork a little bit for people that are listening. I mean, you've got a team of people there that are more or less working with you, right?
Yes.
But I mean,
Yes.
you are, in a lot of ways, this is, pretty much your deal. It's what you spent your life on the last at least couple of years, right? I mean, how long have you been doing the Julian thing full time? Not even
I
full
started
time, but
Julian
you started it a
in,
while ago, right?
yeah, I officially started in 2020. But Julian, first off, named after my mentor, Julian Bond, who was a leader in the civil rights movement and a co-founder of SNCC. And so a lot of, Julian's framework, like actually pretty much Julian's entire framework is grounded in the civil rights movement and those lessons, and combining that with, like technology and innovation. And so I started to develop Julian when I was in law school. And I worked at the innovation lab with some experts to come up with the concept for it. I fleshed it out with professors at the business school. And so it was something that had been in the works for a while. After law school, I worked at a big firm in DC, and doing, private law. And I was miserable. I knew I knew I was supposed to be doing civil and human rights. Like I always knew that. And so, um, so yeah, I founded Julian, and now this is like, this is, this is like,
Yeah.
life. And yeah, I'm glad that I can help. I feel honored I can help. I feel really especially honored that I can come from the kinds of communities that I'm helping, like if you're talking to somebody, there's trust in this work is just so key. And the fact that, I go to somebody's house and their community looks like my community. And then they're like, who are your people? And I tell them and and like we trace it back and, and that part, like understanding the culture, understanding how to maneuver in it has been so important. So I'm really grateful for my background in Mississippi. And I also say that I'm grateful even for like the bad shit.
Right. Yeah. I mean, can you tell us a little bit more about, growing up there, where you grew up, what it was like, what you experienced?
Yeah. So I grew up, like I said, in Jones County, in a Black community. My parents have cows, kind of like a little farm, and my dad, he helped to run the water system for a bit. He was kind of like a, do-it-yourselfer kind of guy, and he would just like get gigs and like make it work. Hell, like at one point he was literally peddling shit like chicken manure from chicken houses, and he would like spread it over people's pastures and get paid for that. But our first house, we grew up in it was a trailer. My dad built onto it till it kind of like looked more closer to a house, and it had I remember it had like these like 2x4s going down the hallway. Like it was just like bare boards in a lot of places. And I remember my brothers and I, we used to joke like we were walking a plank when we were walking down the hallway. But I went to elementary school in this little town called Soso, and like SOSO. And in elementary school, I remember there were like segregated dances. I remember like that part and being told about the Black dance versus the white dance. I remember.
And, I mean, what years is this? Like, I mean, this isn't that long ago.
Yeah, this is like the 90s and like or up to like early like 2000s. And I remember like for like homecoming court and stuff in elementary school, there would be like Black maids and white maids. You would have to choose a Black maid, you have to choose like a white, like it was segregated.
Jesus Christ.
And then in high school, which was a complete shit show. I had a story that's like probably like a lot of people's stories, and I was the only Black person in like the AP classes and stuff like that. It was incredibly, incredibly, incredibly racist. My teachers, I remember there were a lot of times when I had to go back and change my grades. Like I had to review every test, every damn paper, because they would just mark shit off just to like lower my grade.
So you would take a test, know you did well on the test, get your grade, say, well, this doesn't add up. So you have to go recheck your own test, check the answers, and then you have to go to the teachers.
Yep.
How would that work? You go say, hey, how does that work as 13, 14-year-old, freshman, sophomore, junior in high school? I mean, how do you how does that go? Like,
they would be frustrated usually. But once you show like you like this is not wrong, and I would get the book like and show them in the book like what, and they would have to change it, but there were still some times where there were slip ups, and I didn't catch everything. And I remember there was a time I had to actually appeal to like the state board of education to change one of my grades. But
so you're already doing lawyer shit at 14 years old just to get your grades right. God.
I guess so. And so when it was just a lot of shady shit. And I remember my guidance counselor, everybody, people knew I wanted to be a lawyer. And so I wanted to go to Harvard Law School. And I remember my guidance counselor laughed in my face I was like, wow, 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 wow. And so much other shit happened, but I'll go
I
off on
mean,
that. But
did you want to tell the story you've told me about the basketball team?
there was so much with that fucking team.
I mean, for the
Yeah.
record, for people who are listening, the way Jill and I connected super quick was just I did a story for Sports Illustrated about your foundation or your firm, Julian, getting basically a cash infusion and some other help from Drew and Lauren Holiday's JLH fund. So just the context here. So we've been talking here and there since then. And yeah, I mean, you told me just so many insane stories, and now, I mean, still, like, every time I talk to you, there's a new one that's just what the fuck is wrong with people? So, I mean, if you want to tell the
You
basketball
know,
story, I feel like it's a good one, or it's a really shitty one, but
um,
it's indicative of what you're dealing with.
yeah, well, I mean, yeah. I was on the basketball team. I played basketball throughout elementary school and then high school. Like I was like, I wanted to go to the NBA. I was like and when the WNBA came, I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And so
What are your favorite teams?
growing up, oh my gosh, the Chicago Bulls, man. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. I grew up in the Jordan era.
Right.
So that was like
Yeah.
in art
Yeah.
class, my projects would be like the Bulls stuff. But
Mhm.
so in high school, like it was a thing where, like parents would hang out with the coaches and shit, and like sometimes, a lot of times, like all of that shit influenced things. And on our team, our coach, I remember I got into it with him, like a really heated argument, because he wasn't, you know, like there. So I'll say this: there were three girls who play this position. It
Mhm.
was me and two white girls, and one of them was like incredibly good. I played with her throughout, elementary school and shit.
Right.
But in the situation, like he had been hanging out with, I mean, like hanging out with this other person's like dad, and like it was like a thing where it was not okay. And like yeah, and I got cut from the team, and we had like a huge thing in his office. And he told me it was by his good graces that I was even on the team. And I confronted him about the fact that what was happening. Um, and it was like a really, honestly, like, that was like a really heartbreaking thing for me. Like I said, I wanted to go. I was like really passionate about basketball and plan to always play. Um, and so it was really heartbreaking. And it was kind of like this, like, well, what do you kind of do now? And like this refocusing of things. And so um I don't think I really played basketball since then, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's
And what was the reason he gave you?
I guess he thought I wasn't good enough.
Yeah. Okay. So from
Yeah.
there, I mean, I mean, excuse me. But so you do go to Harvard Law eventually, though, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
So there's that. Yeah.
Yeah. I so from high school, I went to UVA, University of Virginia, and didn't know really anything about UVA. I applied because my sister-in-law told me there was a really good school in Virginia. And I assumed that it might be called the University of Virginia. And so I Googled it, and it existed, and I applied, and I got in and got a scholarship. And the first time seeing it was when I got there. And that's where I met my mentor. And the first thing he told me was like when we started to like get to know each other was he said that my purpose in life is to be a disciple of civil rights, because he said I understand it better than my peers, so I have a responsibility to teach them. And
How did he arrive at that? Like, what did he see? What was going on with you that made him say that?
um we were, you know, he had gotten to know me. I was in his class, and I guess, you know, some of the things I said in his class, some
And
of my comments, and then
this is Julian.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
yep. So Professor Bond, and he, so he started guiding me, and I would hang out with him every single week, every single week.
No.
And if I missed a week, when I would come back, he would be like, "Where were you?"
When
And
you say
so
hang
he
out,
started,
what do you mean by hang out? What would y'all do?
we would talk about civil rights. Like
It was
we
just
would,
like
and
office hours, or did y'all like what was the vibe?
you know, you know, it was all during. It was like office hours, yes. And
Mm,
then when he moved to DC, it was like, you know, when I moved to, when I moved to DC, he was
right.
already in DC. You know, hanging out with him there at, you know, American University. I had already graduated college and everything, and still,
Yeah.
but it was like we would watch Motown videos and talk about the songs, and he would dance, and he danced horribly, and we would he would quiz me on civil rights, you know, on civil rights history and on civil rights strategy. So
Mm,
he something that I didn't realize was really common for somebody in his position. I get these emails now, but people, you know, all over the nation reach out to you and they need help. You know, there's a
mm,
lot of bullshit going on. And so what he would do was read those emails to me.
yeah.
And he would say, at the end of it, he would say, "Okay, what would you do?" And I would answer him. And then he would say, "Okay, this is what I would do." And in that way, he like really taught me how to think, like how to
Hmm.
think, like, you know, how to go about certain things and how to, yeah, all the nuances.
He started
But
doing this like dating back to when you were at UVA with him.
yeah, like 2000, 2005, dating back to then.
Yeah.
He passed away in 2015.
Mm,
And so so after graduating, I went to Congressman Lewis's office on Capitol Hill for a bit. Um, and it was there that I found out about civil rights cold cases, that there were these lynchings and stuff that from the civil rights era that had never even been solved or really even looked into. And that was really fascinating about to me. And I and a lot of them were in Mississippi and were like around places where I knew these places, and I was like, what the
right.
hell? And so um
When you say civil
working
rights
on
cold cases, just to provide a little bit more context, I mean, essentially, that means, people have filed reports, etc., saying, "Hey, this shit happened. Seems pretty fucked up," and nothing's been done about it. Is
yeah,
there like an
yeah,
archive of this? Like, how did you come across this? What's that system? Like, how do you come across this?
yeah. So I was researching for a bill that he wanted to pass to release like some records that were sealed. And in all the research, I came across the Civil Rights Cold Case Project. It was a group of journalists led by you know, Jerry Mitchell and Stanley Nelson, Ben Greenberg, and they were looking into these cases. And so I started looking more and more into their work. And um, Jerry, I started looking more into him and seeing his background, that,
Mm,
you know, and all he'd been involved in. And so I reached out, and, you know, he gave me some insight for that bill. And then when I left Congressman Lewis's office, I started working with Civil Rights Cold Case Project with Jerry and with Ben, and I worked on the lynching of Clifton Walker. It was a Black man who was lynched in 1964. He was on his way home from work, and he was ambushed by the KKK. They shot him in his car, like up. And because he had been dating a white woman. So worked on that case. And after all of that, I got to the White House and decided I wanted to do some speech writing. And I was deathly afraid to take any LSAT, to be real with you, and I was looking for a way to fill the time. And so I became a political speechwriter. So I started, I wanted to specifically write for President Obama. So I started, practicing. Like, I taught myself how to be a speechwriter. And so I got a job. I got a job at Target to pay the bills. And I taught myself speechwriting at night, and would send like these speeches I would write to White House speechwriters. And one day I got an email from the Obama campaign, and they wanted to interview me to be a speechwriter. And so
how long did
I
that take?
interviewed. Man, I want to say this was like a year and a half, like at least.
Oh, damn.
It
Wow.
was a while, like, it was grinding and stuff, but
the whole time you were working at Target, and then just
part of the time,
writing speeches.
Part of the time Target, part of the time odd jobs, like doing minimum wage, like little kind of things for people, being like people's assistants and things like that.
And how old are you at the time?
And so I think I was maybe 24.
Yeah.
I think I was 24, 25, something like that. And so
you were locked in on this speech writing thing there for a minute. I mean, that's a year and a half. I mean, that's a while to go for anything like that, especially at that age.
If I get the thing, I will admit this, if I get locked into something, if I like want something, I want that thing. I want that specific thing. I don't want anything, like I don't want a plan B. I want that shit, and I will go all out for it.
Right.
And so that's what it was.
Most people in their 20s are just all over the map. Or I guess a lot of people.
Honestly.
And then you were kind of the opposite. You're like, here's what I'm doing. I'm going to fucking do it until I'm actually fucking doing it. And then, I mean, you did it.
Thank you for saying that, Brandon. Like, it's just.
So how long were you? Yeah, sorry. How long were you then with the Obama campaign, and what went on from there?
I was with the Obama campaign. I can't remember the exact dates. It feels like a while though. But I haven't looked at my resume in a minute. But it was a bit. It was a while. And I remember one thing I remember during that time was the mass shootings, and how you would like the speeches and everything, like when a mass shooting happened or any crisis, but I especially remember that, how you have to like rally, and like that becomes like everything, and figuring out what the messages for figuring out what you're going to say, what people should say, all of that kind of stuff. Like it was, I remember all of that, and it was, but it was a really beautiful time of like, man, like to share a purpose with people around you, for like everybody to be in this common purpose and like to feel that hope. Like that was just like, that was one of the most beautiful feelings I've ever felt in my life. And I'll say that feeling is something that I want to recreate with Julian. Like that is part of the vision. It's not just like a thing that you see, it's like a thing that you feel. And that is what I want America to feel again.
That's like such a, I mean, what a like a juxtaposition of and range of like emotions, though. I mean, you see, for instance, if you see a mass shooting, I mean, it's instant. I mean, heartbreak, sadness. You see all this going on, and then at the same time, the position you're in. I mean, you have to find something in you that's hopeful, because not only to like survive as a human being with emotions and the constant heartbreak that is being alive in this country sometimes, but I mean, you're working for the president, who and you're responsible for helping him help the rest of the country deal with this shit. So, I mean, was there a process to that? Like, how did that work? How many speechwriters were there working on things like this? Were you in rooms together brainstorming? Like, how did that work?
Yeah, so there were two groups of speechwriters because of by law, like White House speechwriters couldn't technically be campaign speechwriters, and so like the president had like a team of campaign speechwriters, which that's what I was on, the Obama
Right.
campaign, and then there were like the speechwriters that were already in the White House, and so basically the way it would happen is like our chief speechwriter, like he ran the show, and we were divided by regions, and would handle.
How many of you were there?
There were four of us and one researcher.
Okay.
So I was the only woman on the team, which was really interesting, and the only Black person on the team, which was really interesting.
Oh, wow,
But it was I'll say, like, to be real about it, like being a speechwriter, after the Obama campaign, I did some other speech writing stuff in Obama world, but like politics just really like broke my heart. And honestly, that process of speech writing and seeing so many things behind the scenes in my own struggle broke my heart. Like I found out, to be real about it, just to be really, really real about it. I felt like there should have been more Black people in that role, especially for the first Black president.
Yeah.
And I found out like a few months ago, I didn't even know this. Like I think I was the only Black speechwriter of any capacity during all 8 terms. I mean, all 8 terms, all 8 years. And like that bothers me. And it was something that I spoke out about, and I know people didn't like it that I was speaking out about it, but yeah, so
that seems really wild.
My ass off,
to me.
Brandon. Like, get me back on track, dude.
No, well, this is all what got you where you are. That is wild, though. You said the only Black speechwriter in all his 8 years.
Yeah.
Really?
There should have been more of us, man.
That's very confusing.
There should have been more of us.
That's so confusing. And I won't dwell on that because there's other stuff to talk about, but wow. Okay.
But yeah, go ask me something. Sorry, I've been like running my mouth. Shit.
No, this is all good. This is what made you and got you where you are now. I mean, well, you mentioned, earlier that you were, so Julian Bond, you first meet him at UVA, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're studying law in some capacity there, and he tells you he says something pretty, intense, which is you're supposed to be a disciple. What did he say? A disciple of the civil rights movement?
He said my purpose in life was to be a disciple of civil rights.
Okay. And yet, and you said even as a kid you wanted to be a lawyer, and yet you're scared to go take the LSAT. No, this is really interesting. I mean, I guess it's funny, but it's like, okay, so what was going on there? Was it, and you were, AP student through high school, clearly a bright, student at UVA. And so what was that about?
All right, we're getting like into like psyche shit. Okay. I'll go with it. Okay.
I'm just curious. It's interesting,
So honestly, I didn't want to fail. I was
this kind of, sorry, finish your thought.
I was just gonna say that, that I said earlier, I'm the kind of person, like when I want a thing, I want that thing. I don't want like a A, B. I don't want like the B, C, D. I want that thing. And so there were only, quite honestly, 3 law schools I wanted to go to. Mm-hmm. Harvard, Yale, or Stanford.
Right.
And I knew what it would take to go there. And honestly, I was afraid of failing. So I avoided it.
Yeah. That's how it goes, right? When something's like the most important thing to you, it's like something in you wants to run away from it. It's wild.
Yeah.
It'll hurt you fucking much if you don't actually get it.
Right. Oh my God. Hell yes. Hell yes.
Okay. Yes. So how'd you finally like get past that?
It was honestly the heartbreak of speech writing. and the stuff that I just talked about, like the heartache of that. It was like, okay, it's time to move. It's time to move on from this, and it's time for law school. Like it was also kind of like a thing of, it's like, what else am I going to do at this point? You know,
Yeah.
it was like I didn't have anything else to stall with.
Yeah.
And so
Nothing else to stall with. Yeah. Like, well, listen, I mean, do that math real quick though. So you graduate, you get so scared of taking the LSAT because you think that'll be too hard. And so you decide instead to become a speechwriter for Obama, because that feels easy compared to
yes.
Okay. So that was like your procrastinating plan on going to law school is let me go work
I
as
will
a
say it was
speechwriter
just
for Obama
I
for a bit.
really was like,
Okay.
I very much was like hope. I was like my mind was like Obama world. Man, I loved
I mean, it was
you know?
I mean, there was
And
something
so
about it. And like you were right there in DC by then. Is that right?
yeah, I was in
So
DC and I
you were
was
feeling it. I mean, like it's
yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty cool thing to happen though. I mean, it's not like you I mean, I was kind of joking about it, but like, it's that's it's a like once in a lifetime opportunity. Like it makes a lot of sense too. But that was a funny. Sorry, my brain's weird. That was just a funny
it's
context for it though. It's like, well,
no, it
it's scary. So
is.
let me go try this other thing. But yeah,
That was definitely like a huge part of it, but the other part of it was that it was heartache. It was I was really heartbroken in speech writing and all of that. And so
did anything else
it
happen
was
that, I
going to law
mean,
school was an escape from that.
what else about it? I mean, the speech writing and politics, I mean, what else about it broke your heart like that?
I felt like I was putting in so much work and showing like, and I it was not a lack of talent. Like I really like worked my ass off and had gotten the skills and all of that. And it was just kind of a thing of like, it wasn't recognized. And I was always referred to as green, no matter what I did, no matter how well I wrote.
Were you like a lot younger than the other ones?
Yeah. I was not a lot younger. The thing is, like the team of speechwriters, President Obama's original team of speechwriters, they were really young,
Right.
like they were really young when in 08 and when they were doing that stuff. And so I don't think age or, that kind of thing should have been a part of it, or maybe it wasn't, but I just really, I wanted to be in Obama world, and I wanted to be like in the White House with that team.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a thing of like constant excuses for why I couldn't be, to be real with you. Like it was, and it it was always something. And like, and it was only years later when I was like, wow, like it just, I don't know. Yeah, it just, there were people who got more with less effort, like way less effort, and way, and so
I got you.
It was really, it was frustrating. I remember at one point, I was in the hospital, because I think there, if I'm remembering correctly, there was like a blood clot in my lung or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was just like so stressed and like trying to do if I told you, if I want something, I go hard,
Right.
hard. And so, it was, so that was the heartbreaking part. Like, it was kind of like, I've shown you guys, I've been here for I've done so much, and y'all don't have a single Black person up in that bitch. Like,
I mean that. Yeah, I was thinking of that because I mean,
so it was just,
that sucks.
It was, and so it was really disappointing, and also kind of just like heartache in the sense of, I think, realization of what the world really was, instead of the ideal that I had in my head for a while.
Yeah. So all this leads you to finally saying, fuck it, I'm going to take this LSAT, more or less. Right?
Yep. And I set a deadline for myself. Yep.
Man, heartbreak's funny like that. It's like, man, well, if I'm going to hurt this bad, I might as well be for the thing I actually care about.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll also say, just like quickly, in speech writing, there also, at the end, there were times when the positions where I was in, I was asked to, like, kind of, I think, manipulate people's emotions in a way that I did not feel comfortable. I didn't feel comfortable with
Oh,
that.
interesting.
And, yeah, like, I remember at a certain point, I remember thinking, like, I could put something in a speech and I would know, like, all right, I'm going to put this in there and I know this is going to be the headline.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
and so there comes, like, I didn't feel comfortable with, like, manipulating people.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. I get that. So how long was the deadline after? So you worked as a speechwriter. How long? You don't remember exactly?
Man, you're making me think.
It doesn't really matter. So you go, I was just trying to get a timeline in my head, but so you do the speechwriting thing for a minute.
Years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, okay, but then it's LSAT time. What was the deadline? And then how'd that go?
My deadline was December 2014.
Okay.
I was like, I'm taking that motherfucking test by then.
Yeah.
That's that. And so it went well.
How long did that give you to prepare?
So I started studying, at that point, I was a speechwriter on Wendy Davis's campaign. She was running for governor of Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And it ended in November. And I think it gave me a month. Like, I'm trying to, like, figure out the dates. I think it was like about a month, but I feel like I was studying longer than that.
You can ballpark it. It's fine.
Yeah, I would say it's probably like 2 months probably. But one of my friends, a really incredible friend, Rebecca Kuno, she let me use her apartment. So I locked myself in and I watched nothing but, like, NFL Network and and studied all day. And yeah. So It went well, and got in where I wanted to go. And yeah.
So you actually did it. Once you finally did it. Just took the one time. Easy.
Actually, no, it didn't. It actually did take more than that. When I tell you I was afraid, I would go and take the test and then I would cancel my score.
Whoa, really?
Mm-hmm.
How many times did you do that?
I feel like I did that at least twice.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would sit through the whole thing, take the whole thing, and then cancel my score.
How are you on time, by the way? Because I just realized it's been a good 50 minutes already.
I am okay. I'm okay. I'm just for the rest of the evening, I'm just doing some
because
work.
Really the main point is to talk about what you've been doing the last few years. But you've had a ride to get there, though, which is part of the reason you do it now. So we'll fast forward a little bit. So Harvard, goes well, right? You get through it, and then you go into private law, corporate law for a little bit. And then, what was kind of the genesis of Julian from Harvard onward? We'll just focus on Julian from here.
So for Julian, after I left my firm, I honestly didn't know who I was. I really didn't. It was a really, really hard fucking time. And I remember Oprah has this book. I'm looking at it right now on my bookshelf. It's called The Path Made Clear. I read that book. I remember, like, reading The Alchemist and, like, just studying all these things and like just really trying to get myself together and figure out what was next, and a lot of prayer. And so it was it was actually one Sunday at church. I was sitting on the out. No, it was a Wednesday. It was a Wednesday. I was sitting on the pew and I felt, man, the person who was talking talking to me. And I was like on the hot seat. I felt like, does anybody else see this? Yeah. And so it was kind of like, and then quite honestly, some things in my personal life just like really started to fall apart. And it was kind of like just like it was obvious, like, yeah, like it's time. It's kind of,
Right.
I thought like Jonah and the whale, like that story.
Yeah.
Where you're running from something.
Mm-hmm.
Because to be honest with you, I'm just gonna be completely real about this shit. I knew this life was gonna be hard as fuck.
Yeah.
And I knew that I was gonna be broke all the fucking time. And that it was gonna constantly be, I knew the workload, I knew the emotional toll, I knew all that shit. And I knew that it was gonna be even heavier for me because I got it in a different way. Cause I'm like from these places, like I see the shit in a different way. And so I ran from it. So it kind of took like all the other options being destroyed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's not just, it's gonna be hard work, hard life. You might feel broke, whatever, but it's, I mean, if you grew up around this stuff, I mean, then you know how little the outside world seems to care about it.
Yes.
It's like, I'm gonna be doing this in a fucking vacuum. I'm gonna be screaming half the time to like, get 5 seconds of somebody even thinking about it. Because people don't like thinking about that shit, which is like, it makes sense because it's so horrible, but like it's so fucked up that it happens. Like you gotta, it's one of those like horrible like paradoxes of life today. Is like these terrible things happen and they feel completely shitty to think about. But I mean, if it bothers you that much, then go help fucking do something about it, maybe.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
But it's hard.
Like,
I mean,
Julian's cases, our first cases, the modern day lynchings, they were cases I started working on and researching in law school. Then they were my pro bono cases at the firm. And so when I started Julian, those were our first cases, the modern day lynchings.
Yeah, because I mean, people
that's
I mean, 1 or 2 of these might make a headline every couple of years, but like this shit's going on a lot. That's what you realized. I mean, you already knew, and that's what most people don't get. I didn't know really until I was talking to you whenever it was a few months ago. It's like, and then you think about it, especially the areas you're from, and I mean, in a horrible way, it kind of makes sense. But it's like, Jesus fuck, like, you think about lynchings, like that's like some ancient shit, but no, like it's still happening.
Hi. So one thing real quick, the show has a sponsor now, Rogue Energy, rogueenergy.com. They make energy drinks in the form of basically these powder packs that you drop into some water, shake them up, and basically work like an energy drink. 0 to 5 calories, sugar-free, gluten-free, soy-free, vegan, vitamins, antioxidants, amino acids, all kinds of good stuff. If you go to rogueenergy.com, you can get free samples. And if you sign up for their email, you actually get 25% off. If you want another 10% off, use my discount code SNEED, SNEED. That's it, rogueenergy.com. Great energy drinks in the form of these powder packets. They got lots of great flavors, blue raspberry, fruit punch, strawberry lemonade, all kinds of things. So rogueenergy.com. Go check them out. And for an extra 10% off whatever you get, use my discount code SNEED, SNEED. Thank you.
What are some of the ones that you first started looking into?
Well, first, Brandon, I shit you not, just like 2 days ago, somebody came to me about another lynching, another suspected lynching of a Black man who in Mississippi who was found decapitated. He was dating a white woman, and it's like all the circumstances are so crazy and suspicious. So we're going to be investigating that one. But the first ones were like the lynching of Raynard Johnson in 2000, 17-year-old young Black man who was the way the way people say it is messing around with white girls. That's the way people say it.
Right.
And so he was found, hanged outside his house, and the circumstances were just so crazy. And he'd been threatened and all of that leading up to it, and there were witnesses and like just ridiculous. And so that was one that basically just they closed the books on. They ruled it a suicide, which is the trend. They're all rule suicides. There's Nick Naylor, who in 2003 was lynched. He went to walk his dogs, and he was found, hanging from a tree with the dog's chain around his neck, in the middle of an all-white hunting camp. This was also in Mississippi. This is also something where everything just kind of like really got swept under the rug. To like it, like that is just, all of these stories are like heartbreaking, but like especially like Nick's family is just they're still going through the pain because they were harassed after that. Like the lynchers like would pop wheelies in their yard at night. Like they would tail them through town. Like they actually ran Nick's sister off the road. She had her baby in the car, like so it wasn't, not a safe environment at all for them. And so to the point where now all the pain from that, they don't even want the answers anymore, to be honest with you. But that case, the Willie Andrew Jones Jr. case is the case that, kind of like from start to finish, like we like investigated from start to finish. It was 2018, 21-year-old Black man in Scott County, Mississippi, found hanging from a tree in his white girlfriend's front yard. We, solved that case down to the minute. Like we knew exactly what happened to him, who did it. We found witnesses that the police didn't find. We found gaps in the police reports. Like it's just so many things that they dropped the ball on. And so we solved that case and we won a civil judgment of over, it was a 11.3 million in 2021 against the lynchers. And still, we've been fighting to get criminal charges, and still there are no charges. The DA has said that, that he's not going to press charges. Like, the hell you're not. Like, what? No, this is a situation where, like, the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation, if you look at the investigative files in that case, the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation basically just like copied everything that the sheriff's department already had. Like they didn't, if you listen to the audio of their interviews, which we have with people, they're asking people about suicide. They're not even really looking into whether or not this could be foul play. Like it was actually the night that he was lynched. Within 40 minutes of his mother arriving on the scene, the police told her that it was a suicide. It was nothing else. You hadn't even investigated shit yet. You hadn't talked to anybody, but you're just saying that this is a suicide. And so like over and over and over again, that's the narrative. And so all of this, all of this goes to hell. Like these rural police departments and policing in general in this nation, like the lack of from the lack of investigation in these modern day lynching cases to the shit that's happening in Lexington, where the cops are like actually terrorizing people. It's like this mentality of just like white supremacy, especially in this state, especially like in the South overall. But I can speak specifically about Mississippi because I've been in this bitch for a long ass time, and so it's just really ridiculous what you see.
So how does that, because so when you go investigate, say, Willie Jones Jr., and so you look at the police reports and everything else, and then you go, okay, this doesn't add up. So how does that work for you as a lawyer trying to investigate and then do something about it? Can you lay that out a little bit, how that process goes to either change things, figure out what the hell actually happened, and if and when you do, find evidence, like how does that work?
Well, first off,
And what is like
getting the
end
police reports.
what is the end result you're hoping for?
Yeah.
Because I mean,
So
yeah, what does justice look like in that situation?
I'll answer that question first. I'll say that, for me, justice looks like what the family wants it to look like. When the work that we do, we don't come into communities with agendas or, like we let them lead it. And I specifically want it that way because there have been so many issues, so many times, throughout history where civil rights organizations have taken advantage of communities and used them to further their own agendas. So varies by case. In Willie's case, what justice looks like is that his mother wants criminal charges. She wants these damn charges, and she also wants them to stop trying to avoid paying the civil judgment. Like, right. At a certain point, they weren't even like working just so they wouldn't have to pay, her for what they did to her son. And so, but I'll say, in terms of what the process looks like, we look at the police file. We basically, we start from the beginning. We look at the police file. I do like my own independent investigation. So, for example, in Willie's case, it meant going to the scene and like measuring the tree. Like walking around, seeing what was what. Like, at that point, the family, the lynchers, like they'd moved out of the house. So like figuring out like, how do I see what's inside this house? And so I can see the layout of where this happened, and like to piece it together, and so what it was also about was, looking at phone records, tracking different things like, and then seeing gaps in the police reports. And then of course, in something like, and a lot of times in cases like that, you have it where like people talk, like somebody's found hanging from a tree. Yeah. People are talking about this. So some people know some stuff. And then people
the people are responsible, they're probably running their mouths a little bit too.
Yes, they did. They did. Actually the night of, one of the lynchers, he was drunk. And from what we've heard, he was telling people, he was bragging about the fact that the police were not looking at him for it. So it's, yeah. And I'll say,
sorry, I'm only laughing because it's very much a laugh so you don't cry or scream.
Oh yeah.
Like, yeah. Good God.
Yeah. Like, and to be honest with you, so far he has been right. Like, cause he's still not charged, and it's so obvious. The evidence is so obvious. I mean, this man told the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation that he did not like interracial dating, that he did not want the guy didn't mean for red birds and bluebirds to be fucking, is what he said. And then of course, like he tried to lynch somebody else 2 years before this happened. Just another Black man who was dating his daughter. So it's really a ridiculous situation.
The fucking peak of human intelligence. Red birds and bluebirds shouldn't be fucking. Okay.
Yeah.
God. Okay. So, I mean, how does that play out from there for you? I mean, how long does this take? I mean, and then, what is the process from there?
The process now is that since they don't want to do it on their own, after we ask them, we're going to have to make them. So that means applying pressure, that means, from the media to organizing to whatever it takes to make this happen, because you're not going to sit there and not charge these people for something they actually did. Like they lynched somebody and you're going to sit your ass there and not charge them. And the thing in all of this is like the agencies that are incentivized not to do anything, because the thing is, if they say, hey, yeah, we need to charge them, that isn't, they're admitting that they fucked it up. They're admitting that they missed those clues, that they didn't, that they did a half-ass investigation. So part of this is like saving their own asses, is what's going on as well.
Yep. Jesus. So how do you force it?
Organizing. Organizing is incredibly important, and the power of organizing, like the work that's happening in Lexington is in large part because of the power of organizing. To like have that information, to like have like people who are like mobilizing the community, because all of these people, the thing is, they're elected, you know, and so that can change. They can be unelected, you know, like all of the and so that stuff comes
Yeah.
through the power of organizing, you know, and we do have a plan strategic. We have a plan specifically for Willie's case, you know, a campaign plan that we're going to be executing. And so we're going to need, you know, the media to partner with us in this and make sure that that the word gets out about what's happening, because it is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. And so you're still working on that, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, what else do you have going on that you're looking into and working on? You mentioned Lexington. What else?
Lexington is like the big thing right now, but
What
other
else is
cases
going
that
on
we
there?
have,
What else is going on in Lexington?
well, we have this hearing coming up for this restraining order on the police, what we filed the suit for, and so that's next Friday. So we're getting, you know, prepared for that. This restraining order would basically, you know, stop the police from violating people's rights, from beating people, from terrorizing this community, from terrorizing these Black citizens, because they're not doing it to the white citizens. It's only the Black citizens.
What are they doing?
They are like false arrests, just arresting people for like no reason, saying that these people have old fines, arresting them because they say they have old fines, then like making them stay in jail until they pay these old fines in cash. You know, like so often there's no record of any of this shit. You know, so it's like basically they're like taking people's money, you know. And that's something that the police chief, the former chief, who, you know, that audio we released a few weeks ago, you know, he bragged about that he was bringing in so much money to this town through, you know, these fines that are based on these, you know, constitutional violations. So getting ready for that. And, you know, one thing that we're asking the court to do is to compel this damn city to ask for help from the state, because Tate Reeves, the governor of Mississippi, he can easily deploy forces to police the police, essentially. You know, so that is what's needed here, because these cops, I mean, there was just somebody the other day who got roughed up by the cops just the other day. Like this is not stopping. And people need to understand that, like, if you've been doing something a certain way for forever, like this is a continuation of Jim Crow. Like Jim Crow never, ever died in these places. And so you're not going to stop just because, you know, somebody says you should stop. You're going to feel like I'm so big and bad. I'm going to do exactly what the hell I've been doing. And, you know, and I'm going to get away with it. Yeah. Because honestly, in this state, so often people do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, what kind of danger have you been in through this? What do you do to take care of yourself, protect yourself?
Honestly, I pretty much always have a gun on me. I grew up with guns, and so that's one thing. I can't say like everything we do, but just because I don't want people to know what our safety protocols are. But
probably
I will say, decision. Like for our people on the ground, though, we've been having security there with them for the last few weeks, because like one of our organizers, an alderman, tried to run her over with his pickup truck. That same alderman in Lexington was stalking my director of organizing for Mississippi, stalking her. And they both pressed charges against him. So it's really, you know, more so for my team, an incredibly dangerous environment for them. And so, yeah, I just really, in this community, like the people who are coming forward, who are speaking out, they're doing that at the risk of, you know, so far people who've spoken out, hell, they've been arrested themselves
Yeah.
for speaking out, you know? And so this is definitely shit that should not be happening in the United States of America. And, you know, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Gotcha. Damn. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, you mentioned, you know, earlier, like part of your fear maybe of doing this is knowing, you know, it's going to be hard, and especially, you know, financially. Like, how do you like manage? Like, how do you support
Uh,
yourself? How do you support the work? How tight have things gotten? How do you make it through? Like, what's the money story of all this?
you know, the money story, when I started Julian, I used my savings from the law firm to build it. And then that money ran out. Um, and it was like just fucking working for free and borrowing money for a while there. Like, shit. Like now, Julian, we have some great funders like Ford Foundation, Kellogg Foundation. The money that we have is still really small and not at all enough to, like, you know, we're doing basically the work of, you know, like we're doing the same like level of work as the major civil rights organizations, LDF, you know, ACLU, like these orgs. But we have a fraction of their budget. So like it's just so much of this has been goodwill. And I have so much to be thankful for. Like it's been hard as hell. But even with it, you know, being hard and, you know, not having money a lot of times for things, like there are so many people who volunteer their time and like who just like helped, like our logo, somebody just created that for us for free, you
Yeah.
know, like that's amazing, you know, you know, like we have, you know, shit like Drew and Lauren. I mean,
Yeah.
I think, you know, I told you this, but they were like outside of like my family, which they were letting me borrow money. Like, you know, my family was letting me borrow money, but outside of my family, like Drew and Lauren were the first people to invest in this.
Yeah.
You know, it's
How did
I
that
will
come about?
so Obama world, man.
Mm.
You know, I applied for it. One of the people who has
When
just been
when was this?
this was in 2021.
Okay.
Yeah. I applied for it and got it. And I'll say, you know, Alexis Feaster, along with, you know, of course, Drew and Lauren, has like she's been incredibly helpful to Julian and been like a really awesome resource. So
Yeah, I know Lexus is with Kinship,
kinship
right?
advisors.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she was actually one of the first people I talked to about Julian, like right after I founded it. And she gave, you know, so she's one of the people who, for example, like dedicated some of her time for free, like, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So there were people who just like with incredible hearts said they want to help. There's like a short film that's, you know, that's in post-production right now on Julian's work. And, you know, so we're like that part, like those individuals who did that film, they did that for free. The director,
Yeah.
Mina Ayeti, she did that for free, you know, and raised the money and all of that to get the rest of it done. And so, you know, it's Julian is like, you know, it's been hard, but at the same time, I've been really, really, really blessed, especially, I want to be real about something. Like Black women who do this work, we don't get recognized. Like we don't. Like Black women have been leading civil rights for a really long time, but you only ever see men who get the credit. And so with that being said, you know, a huge issue in this work has been like, you know, trying to get attention, traction, funding for things where, you know, honestly, if I were a man with, who with name any of the ones that you think of right now that you see in the news, like, you know, I would have had that,
Yeah.
had that already, you know?
Yeah.
it's a completely different kind of fight here. So it's like you're fighting like you're fighting like for people outside, but also inside. Civil rights is incredibly sexist. This industry is incredibly sexist. And so like fighting that battle in this too has been, that's been a huge thing that's been sad as well. But I think that we're winning.
Yeah. You're up against a lot of shit, Jill.
Yeah. But
how do you deal?
I pray. I try to get time, by myself when I can. I really look to the civil rights movement a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like the lessons that from that, like my conversations with Professor Bond get me through a lot.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going through anything that's new. There's always been opposition to civil rights work, and there's also always been sexism in civil rights. Dorothy Height, who,
right.
I hope that in life I'll even get to do a fraction and have a fraction of the impact she had. They wouldn't even let her speak at the March on Washington, and she led one of the major civil rights organizations in the nation. Every speaker up there was a man.
Yeah.
Rosa Parks, when she was supposed to speak at a mass meeting, during the boycott, and she, they wouldn't even let her do that. Like, this has been a thing where women have been like, nothing I'm going through is new. And so what I'm saying is, like, I look at that strength, but also recognizing that I'm different and I do things in a different way. I think then it was like this thing of, you don't, like, not saying something is being graceful. Like, you don't want to say anything about it because then it looks like you're making it about you.
Right.
Or, like, or you're just like being, dramatic or whatever. Like, no, shit's not okay. Because when somebody doesn't give a woman like the attention that they give a man in this work, that means our clients get ignored. So yeah. Sorry, I'm rambling. Let me shut the fuck up, Brandon.
No. No. I mean, yeah, tell us a little bit more about, what's the story, what you were thinking about, like with Dorothy Height and even Rosa Parks?
No, it was just Dorothy Height, the March on Washington, 1963, where there was the I Have a Dream speech.
Mm-hmm.
She was one of the, people say the big six civil rights organizations, and they always leave hers out. She led the National Council of Negro Women. She was one of the organizers for the march, was helping to get all the stuff together, and had a tremendous impact in the movement.
Yeah.
And it was decided behind the scenes, that they would not allow her to speak. It was actually John Lewis was the only person who advocated for her to speak.
Mm-hmm.
The only person who stood up for her. And she didn't. So you see in the photograph, if you look at the I Have a Dream speech, from one angle, you see her in the background, like just standing up there. And so that was not okay. The only woman who had a voice that day was Mahalia Jackson. It's because she sang. So it was a really huge distortion of what civil rights actually was, because women were leading that fight.
Yeah. Why is it like that? It seems like y'all are all fighting for the same thing.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, we are. And so that's one thing that really annoys me, the distractions. And people who are fighting for equality, you should embody equality as well. You should treat everybody like that.
I was trying to
this should be
articulate it
one
in my
industry
head.
without that shit.
Right. That's what I was trying to articulate in my head, how to say it. But yeah, it's like, all right, so we're going to go fight for equality, but we are going to do so in an equal way within our own community. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Come on, man. People.
I'm gonna be real. I had to fucking block Sean King on IG because he kept like stealing my fucking content. but wouldn't help at all with any of the work we were doing. We asked over and over and over again, can you help with this? Can you amplify this? And he would just like not do shit. But then he would like take our content and post it as his own. And it was like, so often,
what did he take? What's an example?
One example is last year there was this Nazi prison guard that the US deported. And I posted about basically making a comparison to the Emmett Till case and how Carolyn Bryant to this day has not been prosecuted. And I know so much shit with that lately, but that was the comparison I made, that like the US, like, can do that, but not prosecute her. Like, and so the next morning, that's his post. And it's like he got it like a news outlet to put it up. And then, since then I've been hearing people make that messaging point, well, the US deported like the Nazi prison guards. And it's like, like Black women's work is constantly stolen. Our voices are constantly silenced in all of this. And it's not okay. It's really not okay. I work my ass off to get the knowledge I have. And, so everything, it's something that's been going on for a really, really, really long time.
Yeah.
Now every single time I see a woman who is doing a civil rights case and she's in the news, I write her and I say, like, shit, congratulations. Like, you are doing incredible work. Like, please don't stop, because I know how hard that shit is to just get somebody to pay attention, like, yeah.
Like, I feel like if I were you, I would just need to scream for at least half an hour every day. Like, I just don't. Good God. Oh man. Wow. What what are some wins you've had though along the way?
Yeah. So I would say one big win for us was solving Willie's case.
Yeah.
That was huge because we did what agencies had not done. Agencies who are built for this hadn't done. I would say another win is the more recent one of the firing of this police chief in Lexington. Somebody on my team, Cardell Wright, he obtained that audio from the officer who recorded it. Mm-hmm. And then we collectively decided, what to do with it, given the circumstances and everything. And so we had been on the ground there. Francine Jefferson, our director of organizing, like the operation had just been going, like it was great, like the strategy, the coalition of organizations, Julian, ACLU, Mississippi, the Mississippi Bail Fund, People's Advocacy Institute, like, Freedom Democratic Party, the coalition, like we were like working seamlessly. And so, for that to lead to his being fired, I found that as a victory, because honestly, they would have never let me not say never, but it would have taken, hell, the suit that we filed and, millions of dollars in damages likely to get rid of him, because they were bent on keeping him. And even after all of that, they only fired his ass by a 3-2 vote. That should have been 5. That should have been like unanimous, So the thing is, from day one, they knew who they were hiring. And so, but I see that as a victory. And I think honestly, being where we are, like I see honestly at this point, like every day a victory, because at being such a young organization with so few resources, the fact that I'm really proud of this organization. I'm really proud of my team. Because like, hell, they've been leading this crisis. Like, this organization has been leading established organizations in this crisis. And it shows our effectiveness that was so little, we can do so much. there are other things, but I don't want to run my mouth too much, Brandon.
Well, and we've been going almost 90 minutes now, so I'm gonna let you go in a minute because I know you got a million things to do too. But yeah, I mean, what do you need? What does the organization need? What can people do to help with
Yeah.
this shit?
So one, I would say even before money, we need people. Like, so donate your time, donate your talents. Like I mentioned earlier, like people, like it's been like blessings that have like helped us to be where we are. Um, and I will say also, yeah, donate your money if you have it.
Yeah.
Like, you can donate at julianlegal.com. There's a donate button on there and you get a tax receipt, all of that emailed right to you. But what I'll also say is the things that we need, like when I tell you, we don't even have an office, man. Like, like we are really so bare bones and just like out in this community and just making the shit work. So, what we also need is for people to respect what we're doing and stop doubting it because we don't look the way that, you think we should look, just because I'm not a man, just because, I'm not a million years old. Like,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that I don't know what I'm doing. That doesn't mean that we're not effective. That doesn't,
Yeah.
to leave the bias at the door is what I would ask for as well.
Yeah.
And to amplify.
I mean, clearly, the Willie Jones Jr. case is proof of what you can do, right? I mean, what was the final result there? I mean, I know you're still working on parts of it, but I mean, you say you solved it. What were the benefits that happened because of that? And what do you see as having been, done as a result?
Well, one, I think it started a conversation about modern day.
And when you say you solved it, I don't think we ever, can you clarify what that means? You solved the case.
So what that means is we figured out the sequence of events, what happened to Willie. We found out who had lynched him. It was his stepfather, his girlfriend's stepfather had lynched him, along with her uncle.
Which one of them was the guy running his mouth at the bar?
The stepfather.
Yeah.
And that wasn't at the bar. That was actually like at the scene later that night.
Oh, right. Okay.
Because it was at his house.
Gotcha.
But we won the civil suit there. But I think that what that did was it started a conversation about modern day lynchings in this country. And I think a lot of people didn't know that they still existed before then. I see the results of this as Willie's mother. That's like the big thing that I think about all of the time. She's like my sister. And to see her get like a little bit of justice, she still hasn't gotten nearly what is due her.
What's the deal? I mean, because you won this civil suit. So can you just explain what that means real quick?
Yeah. So in civil court, in civil court, we sued and we won a suit for, it was wrongful death, basically. Mississippi doesn't have a civil rights statute. So it was a suit for wrongful death. And what we did and what we started doing immediately, actually even before we even got to the end of the civil suit, was to start working on criminal charges. So meeting with the DA, handing over, our findings and stuff to him, the evidence that, the police had not gathered, all of that stuff. And so where things are now is that we're pushing to get charges. I'm worried my phone is going to die on you, Brandon. But we're pushing to get criminal charges at this point, like murder charges against these individuals. And also to make sure we get, the Department of Justice involved in the FBI, because this is like the exact kind of case that they need to be in.
Right.
So yeah, those are some of the things. But what I want to happen, there needs to be like a congressional hearing, like from the House of Representatives on policing in rural America, that will talk about, and my friend Jerry Mitchell, the journalist, suggested this, that will talk about the lynchings, and how these things are just being like, just glossed over and ruled as suicides, and also the things like Lexington and what cops are doing to people.
Yeah.
This isn't, I'm not making an argument of like anti-police. That's not it. What I am against is like violating people's rights.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
that's, so that's the fight that we're in
Yeah.
all of this.
Yeah. Well, what will it take to get the criminal charges filed and to bring them?
It's going to take this DA knowing that there are consequences for his actions, for his lack of action.
Yeah.
It's going to take that, whether that means that he doesn't get reelected, whether that means that whatever thing he's trying to do next can't happen. I think it's honestly going to take that, like, directly, getting at the people who are holding up the progress. It is that DA, Stephen Kilgore. He has the ability to to bring charges in this. Like, he has that fucking ability. And has not done shit. And I'll also say that his office is in Neshoba County. Neshoba County is the county where the 3 civil rights workers during Freedom Summer were murdered, and their bodies were found in an earthen dam. So like that county has its own ridiculous history with like racial terror. And so I think it's going to take that. And I also think it's going to take the Department of Justice getting involved. One thing that I have seen in this work is that Mississippi officials ain't going to do shit without being made to do it. Like, you have to hold their asses to the fire, man. It's like,
I mean, it is like I've pulled up, and I will let you go in a minute. I just wanted to give people listening who aren't aware or familiar with his case just more of an idea. I mean, it's not like you just hear this guy rambling drunk and he says these things. I mean, it's also, I mean, you found different evidence. I mean, the police that, they get there, and I mean, this guy tells him, oh, well, he said he was going to go outside and hang himself. And then that's what he did, which, okay. And then, like, they just completely overlook this other evidence that you pulled up, which is, I mean, grass in his hair, his shoulders dislocated, there's other things going on. And then, I mean, this belt that he's, from is on a branch that's, 7, 8, 9 feet in the air. And I mean, he's a shorter guy. I mean, 5'8", you say here. I mean, so these are just questions. Like, it's none of those in and of themselves say, okay, well, this one dude definitely, lynched this guy, but that's not even the point. It's like, it raises questions that clearly don't go explored. And so that's really just as much the point. It's like, okay, what the fuck is going on? I mean, it's clearly not a suicide. So
Willie had an arm injury. He could not have hung himself. He couldn't have hanged himself,
And so it's just, I just mentioned all that to say, I mean, it's clearly there's other factors that it's not just that these things are happening and, oh, well, it must be a suicide because reasons. It's like there's stuff that is intentionally ignored and overlooked by these police officers, detectives supposedly investigating these cases. And then, I mean, everything you've said before would, of course, follow. It's like, well, of course, the DA, even the best case scenario, if the DA is just like, okay, then, they're still, gonna, they're, their neck's on the line at that point. If they go back and say, oh yeah, I fucked up. Like, it's small people doing small people things, and so that's what you're dealing with. And the legal system's already a fucking nightmare in the best of cases. So you're just dealing with all of it. So
but we're gonna win. All of this shit is like, there's a winning strategy in place, and so it's just a matter of executing that. So I believe, like, fully that we're gonna win all of this shit. And we just need people to believe, and to believe in their own power. Hell, people will only do what you let them do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what people have to realize, that all of these people work for them and they control them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What is the end game? Like, what's your, your version of all of this working out for the best over the long haul? I mean, it's all going to be a long haul, but I mean, what's the goal here?
You know, a simple way I've said it before is like, to have a world where, you're born somebody to everybody, like that shit just doesn't exist right now. I'll say, like, the goal is for people to feel the hope and the community that they felt during the Obama campaign. Like, that's the goal in terms of like effect, in terms of like what things actually look like, in terms of like crimes and stuff, is that fucking hate crimes need to stop. Police abuse, like, that would be gone, and there's technology, there's an app that, that, like, hell, that we've designed, that we are trying to get the funding to develop, that will help with all of this shit. Like, there's so many solutions that there's just not the money for, though.
Right.
So, but I would say that, the goal is for people to feel safe, for people to not worry, like, if I go outside, I'm just fucking driving around, that the cops are going to fuck with me for no fucking reason. Like, like, to have that security, to actually be able to live your life and have the shit that is guaranteed you, like life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, all that shit, like that. Those are basic. Those should be basic ass things that right now are luxuries in this country. And so, I would say that is the goal, like, to create that, and especially to create that feeling for people to have hope and to see their own power.
Yeah. All right. JulianLegal.com. Donate all there. Where can people find you on social media?
On IG, I am at Jill_Collen_Jefferson. And so at Julian, we're Julian_CRHR. Civil rights, human rights.
All right. Awesome. Yeah,
Thank you so much.
I will put some notes. I'm gonna have a newsletter running in conjunction with this at my website, brandonsneed.com, and I'll put those links in that with this too. But yeah, thank you. I really only planned for this to take an hour, and like everything I do, it took almost twice as long. So, I appreciate that. Hell of a story. Doing good work.
This has been awesome.
Any parting thoughts, questions, concerns?
Nope. Right. I thank you, Brandon, for what you're doing. Thank you so much for shedding light on this shit. Like, it's going to keep happening if we don't. So thank you so much for being an ally in this fight.
No, hopefully it helps. So appreciate you.
Thanks again to Jill for sharing her story, and thank you for listening and watching. If you're watching, make sure to check out Jill's work at her website, julianlegal.com, JULIAN legal.com. And again, for show notes and bonus material and all that, subscribe to my newsletter, which you can find a link to at brandonsneed.com, BRANDONSNEED.com. And next week, we'll be back with another one. Thanks again for being here, for listening, and more soon. See ya.